So I guess technically we have some follow-up to start with.
Amazingly.
And we haven't even had an episode yet. This is technically the first episode.
Yes, it is. I found this bit of follow-up because I just had to know. And it was I really wish I had looked more for the diving, the actual diving times held. But the longest, and this is a Guinness World Record, but the longest recorded time a person held their breath. So not diving, just in a pool in Barcelona, which sounds kind of glorious in a way, but 24 minutes and 3 seconds.
Yeah, I don't remember the stuff in the book very well, where I saw the reference to it before, but I know that there was talk of 20 minutes not being unheard of, even for freediver.
Makes sense. If I was better at recalling what I learned in mammalian physiology, I'd probably could briefly describe there's a mammalian diving response. So when mammals dive, there's something that happens, and maybe that'll be follow-up for next week.
The other bit of follow-up I put in there, upon re-listening to portions of the just recording and kind of figuring this out episode, the gain levels to me were way too low. And I didn't hear that discrepancy when I was playing it off the computer. So I just need to learn more about the editing process in general, and I'm sure that'll come with time.
So, I was listening to a different podcast today, and they talked about the loudness. There's like a loudness unit. I think it's LUFS. It's going to have to be more in a follow-up for next week because I've forgotten. But there is a loudness unit that's used to sort of try to standardize the volume in a podcast. I don't think it's limited to podcasting, but it's definitely widely used in podcasting.
Well, it's during my editing, trying to figure out things like the chapter markers and everything else. I'm not surprised, but there's a utility that Marco created called Forecast that you can export the file from Logic, just pull it into Forecast, and it takes care of the conversion to, I think it's 96 kilobits per second on the MP3, and takes the markers from Logic and makes them chapters.
Nice.
So you don't have to do anything other than just drop the file in and let it do its thing.
And that is the beauty of computers.
Yeah.
Let a machine more precisely do the work that people could do, but shouldn't do. Automation is the way to go. Incidentally, he was the one who was talking about or a question was asked of him about the loudness, and it was him who mentioned those units that I have promptly forgotten. Literally listened to it yesterday and have forgotten.
I shouldn't be surprised it's him. At this point, I really should just send him a message and ask him, okay, I have no clue what I'm doing. Where would I begin to at least get a baseline for normalization and what audio output to look at, and what do I look at to see that, and go from there?
Yeah. I do remember about 7 years ago, I thought about creating a podcast with a friend of mine from, he's from Louisiana, and we were going to do something. We had very, very good friends, but differing worldviews and so forth, and so we thought about it, but it just never came to. I think we recorded one time, but it never went beyond that. Nothing ever got edited, and nothing ever got uploaded. So miles ahead on this podcast. So, but I just remember coming across a podcast about podcasting.
And I will say that by the time I finished the just random conversation as episode 0, I was starting to do more of what I would consider to be actual editing as well, where I removed some of the different pauses, and part of that was just because as it got later, you could tell we were getting tired, and so responses were a little more delayed and that kind of thing. And so making the conversation sound a little more free-flowing instead of having the pauses, and it worked out well. Now I just have to figure out some of the other stuff that's more advanced, not just, cutting little segments and adjusting them.
Right.
So I suppose we should probably actually move into the topics, unless you had anything else related to the follow-up.
I mean, I think I just created more follow-up for myself, and but yeah.
I'm sure it'll be a long-running thing, given the nature of our conversations in general. So, I guess really, welcome to the first true episode of the Untitled podcast. Beyond that, I don't have any general introduction that I care to use. I kind of like the idea of just moving straight into the conversation, similar to talk show and others that we listen to. The intros just get in the way.
Agreed.
But if there's anything that you would want to add as far as introducing yourself, feel free.
Yeah, I'd say I'm completely unqualified for every topic that we're going to talk about, but we're going to do it anyway.
Well, that's the whole point of the podcast.
I
know. Simple enough then to move into what to expect, and this we may have slightly differing opinions since we haven't talked about it. But I think the best thing to expect is just random free-flowing conversation around whatever couple of topics we've set aside to begin with, and I'm sure that it will not adhere to those topics, and I'm pretty sure the topics will probably end up being drastically different than anything planned anyway. So it's really more a matter of expect free-form conversation like you would expect a couple of people to have enjoying drinks.
Mm-hmm. Have you ever heard of the Devil's Dictionary?
It does not ring a bell.
I had not heard of it, and somebody brought it to my attention, and I think a lot of why it has, I hadn't heard of it, and not surprised that you haven't heard of it, but it was written in the 19th century by a man named Ambrose Bierce. I'm assuming that you could probably get a copy of it, at least an ebook copy of it, for free, as there's probably no copyright for it, but it's quite an interesting work. Ambrose Bierce put together an entire, a alternative dictionary, and it was he's quite a wordsmith, and I thought I'd read an entry. I would consider myself an optimist, and as an optimist, when something, if I'm in a bad situation, as an optimist, my response is this could be a lot worse. So I'm that kind of optimist, but I really enjoyed his entry for Pessimism. And the entry reads, "Pessimism is a noun, and it's a philosophy forced upon the convictions of the observer by the disheartening prevalence of the optimist with his scarecrow hope and his unsightly smile."
By that definition, I might be a pessimist.
Well, he has a whole dictionary full of entries quite like that. Many of them are very cutting, so I thought I'd share that for no particular reason, other than it was on.
Is there an entry for realist?
I don't know. I will have to find that out.
Okay. And generally speaking, I've just always thought of myself more as a realist, but I've used that definition to being more of a kind of even keel, where I may lean more toward a pessimistic view on some things and an optimistic view on others, and it's more that it accurately reflects my perception of whatever is occurring at that time.
Yeah, every pessimist I've ever met has been a self-described realist.
That's not surprising.
No.
I think too many people don't actually know what pessimism brings as far as a full outlook on life in general. It's inherently negative on every action, regardless of the actual intent. And most people are not pessimistic by nature from that definition.
That is, I was going to say that's interesting. I think I would have come to that conclusion on my own. But I don't think I ever thought about it long enough to actually think that that is how the pessimist's outview is like. I feel like I know a pessimist when I meet a pessimist, or at least someone being pessimistic. I don't want to. I don't want to. I don't want to paint everyone's entire life by one or two meetings, but I can recall I can recall a time once where I went in my early 20s. One of the first jobs it was actually my first tech job, and I remember walking around and asking folks if they thought like I said, the proverbial glass is half full or half empty. I said, "What do you think?" And they would tell me what they think, and some people half full, half empty, but then people got kind of fun with it, because like I would always say, like I always saw the glass as completely full. It might be half full of water and half full of air. And then I remember getting some great answers like, "Ooh, water! I'm gonna drink this." And my favorite pessimistic response was, "That's probably poison."
Well, I'm sure you've seen the meme at this point that uses the glass analogy where it's half full, half empty, and then if you look at 2020, the caption is, "It's probably pee, isn't it?"
Yeah, I did see that. But if it's 2020, then it's pee and it's also poisoned.
Yeah.
But not like a poison that's going to kill you instantly. It's going to be a long slow death.
Oh, at least another 5 to 6 years. Enough to make you suffer.
Yeah. So one of the things that I see going on is, everybody's like, all right, 2020 sucks. I'm ready for 2021. But it's not like the pandemic expires on December 31st.
It goes into the other meme that I've seen a lot, where suddenly calendars have a December 32nd.
Yeah. That's a pessimist calendar.
I do think it's interesting to abstract that a little bit and look at 2020. It's easy to point to it as a negative experience or a bad time, but for me, it's been pretty positive almost exclusively. Like the only thing that I feel like I've missed so far this year is we haven't taken any type of vacation travel. So we normally don't do anything big anyway. It's normally just one or maybe two little small trips a year, but we haven't done that so far. And that's the only thing that I really kind of feel like I'm missing.
I mean, as a year, like, it hasn't been good, and it's had some more negative effects on me than I would say a standard year. But I would say, like, there are certain things that have happened in my life that I'm so grateful for, and I don't think would have happened if there wasn't a pandemic, or at least they wouldn't have happened in the way that they have happened. And it's been a very positive experience, and I can't help but be appreciative of that, or at least find comfort in that, and to say in the old Southern way, I've been counting my blessings.
Yeah, I don't know if I can, even though I've lived, born, raised, lived in the South in my entire life, I still don't know if I could go that far.
I'm just being, what's the word? I'm relating.
Yeah. I think the main reason is because pretty much everything that I can point to as a significantly positive effect has been a manufactured and or measured response to the current issues. So, without the pandemic, I certainly wouldn't have started the fitness journey. But the main reason I started it was because I knew I needed the exercise for mental, just the benefits that are the benefits that exercise provides mentally. It wasn't even a desire to achieve any certain level of fitness. It was just, no, if I'm going to be stuck in a house or, whatever surroundings that I'm stuck in for the unforeseeable future, I need to exert energy to feel better. And that was the impetus for beginning and making it all more about fitness. And then, the ability to work from home and ripping everything out of that middle room and actually making it a usable office again instead of a massive closet. And that makes everything feel better as far as less clutter and, things are at least organized and usable. I don't feel like there's this whole room in the house that is now just wasted space anymore. So things like that, but those are things that definitely would not have happened had we not been forced to reside in a relatively contained space for any prolonged period of time.
Yeah, I see what you've got going on, and I feel like you're having the pandemic response that everybody wishes they were having, and I think it's really awesome. It's inspiring, and because I've entered my phase 1 of getting in shape, and so I, on the other hand, like I've had sort of like I wouldn't say a negative response, but like I've had a hard time, like a harder time than I would have expected, and I'd say like there's a good like couple of months where I just felt like I was in a real funk, and I couldn't get things done, and I just remember having to try to take over or like get some kind of control in my life, and I was like, I'm gonna do like just one small thing a day. And the first thing I picked was like, I'm gonna make, like, I don't care, every day I'm gonna make my bed and make sure like my covers are made and it looks nice and neat. The rest of my room might need like all kinds of work done, but my bed's gonna be okay. And without fail, I've done it every single day since I made that decision, and it's felt really good. And then I added the next thing, which was like make sure like all the dishes in my sink are cleaned. I've just like slowly been adding things in because I missed going to work. I missed, most of the time I'm at work, I'm working, but there is a social aspect of being around other people also working, and like lobbing a joke over the cubicle wall to my boss and getting a response back and so forth. And then, also like, you and I would have conversations from time to time, and that was always nice. And so I feel like I felt bad, and I was like, you know what, I'm going to be okay with that, and I'm going to be okay with not getting all the things done and not changing my life for the better because I have all of this extra time. Because in the reality, it's like my schedule got messed up. And now I'm having to find and reorganize and work on a new schedule. So I've slowly been like grabbing the daily aspect of my life and controlling it the way I need to control it, and not let it control me.
It's interesting that you mentioned schedule, because that's still something that is difficult to adapt to. I don't think we've found individually or as a whole, as far as our family is concerned, an actual workable schedule from the foreseeable future. At this point, it's just more of every couple of days we reevaluate and figure out what we need to adjust for the next day or two. And most of that is because there's not a good clear delineator between work and not work.
Yeah.
And it gets muddled even further with, like, I'll take the lunch break because it's a good middle break of the day. And that's when I'll squeeze in a workout so that, one, I don't just sit and stare at the computer all day anyway. And two, it forces me to get up and move and do something. And then I feel better afterwards and I can focus again easier. But even that, coupled with taking Jacob back to daycare, it's almost like each week the schedule has to change again and again to actually incorporate everything that it needs to incorporate. And part of it is that, with the shift to working from home more, or exclusively at this point, and because we're working for a multiple time zone, multiple country company, a lot of things get scheduled at times that aren't necessarily the most convenient if you were just doing them in the office with peers. And so the week seems to change pretty significantly just from whatever meetings or other things may be added or changed or done in addition to what you would want to try to get done for the day.
It's kind of interesting to see how all of a sudden having a large part of the company be just 2 time zones away have such a drastic impact on the day. Or have you noticed that?
Yeah, I actually didn't think about it in the terms of 2 time zones, but that's partially, I think, because I've also been pulled into a number of meetings from individuals in Krakow because of the security role.
A lot more time zones.
Yeah. Well, with that group, it tends to be either the very first thing in the day or the very last thing in the day for me because it fits their schedules better. But they also tend to hit what would be lunch for me. Then again, so did the folks in California. So that's not too big of a difference. But trying to juggle that many different areas and what time works best has certainly been difficult.
I was kind of wondering how many time zones difference they were.
I've never actually looked it up.
Yeah, I just looked it up, and I just didn't want to do the math that quickly in my head. My role has, at the beginning of the year, talked about how certain things in my role were going to change, and they have changed, but I was expecting them to change in the office rather than at home, and like overall they were like really good changes, and I was like happy to see them come about. But as a consequence of those changes, because of the pandemic, we've gone from, like, my group has gone from less support and more implementation, and as a consequence, I keep having projects that get delayed because of COVID, and I think I've had every single one of my projects delay in the past few months, delay at least once because of the pandemic. And so then I'm like, I'm ready, and it's like it's a lot of hurry up and wait, and so that's been less than ideal.
Yeah, I would say that as far as impact to what I was doing pre-COVID, the actual tasks that I'm performing are significantly different now, but the time and investment and just day-to-day have been relatively consistent as far as taking up the time and having to deal with general groups of people, and I haven't had a lull where it's been just kind of sit and wait, and that's probably been beneficial. Maybe not. I have had a few days very kind of sporadically where I was actually able to stop and focus on something that I wanted to focus on and not something that was mandated from elsewhere. And it's gotten to where those are the days that I wish I still had, because I had more of them pre-pandemic than I've had since I've been working from home.
Yeah, that makes sense. I recall you having a few projects that you were working on, and you got to work on what you wanted to work on. I thought that was pretty cool. I didn't realize how much I was going to be just how off-putting I found, like, expecting a project to complete and then it not get, like, push out and go be delayed. And like before, like every once, like a delay would happen every once in a while. I was like, it's no big deal. It just meant that it got me time to do more things for that project and go back and make sure I got everything done, give me more time with it. And so now I'm just like, come on, let's get it going. Let's get it off the books. I'm ready to go. So that has been an interesting change for me.
I will say the one big thing that I can point to that I miss are the general conversations that arise out of just bumping into somebody or saying hi or whatever. Those have been significantly hampered, to say the least.
Yeah. I don't get that at all anymore.
Speaking of, is Friday going to work for you for Healthy Pores?
This Friday?
Yeah.
It is. I missed that. There was I remember that night, there was a lot of messages that came through, and I just now remember that I didn't go back and catch up. No, this Friday is not going to work for me. We're actually... Friday's when my dad's funeral is going to be. They had to.
Okay.
We had to wait so that my sister could get healthy because she was still sick and she didn't want to spread the disease around. So.
Yeah, I told JF I would ask. I knew we would be chatting this evening. He said he didn't remember seeing a response, and so I told him I would confirm. I don't know if that means we'll shift it to, I think next Friday is probably fine too. The biggest question mark there is whether Brad's still doing any traveling or not. But even then, I would expect him to be back by Friday anyway.
Yeah. So I was looking in the topic list. We've got masks, and why can't people just try to wear them?
Yeah, it's a fascinating topic to me because I've heard so many people talk about it being a thing that's just a manifestation of taking away rights or whatever BS argument they want to make. I don't even understand it enough to give it enough credence to try to formulate a thought process behind it. I firmly believe that the anti-mask people are the same people that think vaccines are evil and cause autism.
Yeah, I imagine that Venn diagram is almost a perfect circle.
And so the main reason I put it in the show notes is because I wanted to use the title that I bet anti-maskers are anti-vaxxers too.
Nice. I like how you went there. Yeah, so, we just got a whole big set of, a whole big example of why you should wear a mask with the bicycle rally in South Dakota. It's called Sturgis. I'm assuming there's a Sturgis, South Dakota, and this has nothing to do with the singer No, that's Sturgill, not Sturgis. Yeah, so I'm assuming that's Sturgis, South Dakota.
I actually didn't see this news, so this is news to me.
Okay, so there was a few weeks ago, there was a bunch of folks on motorcycles that met up in Sturgis, South Dakota.
Yes, I do remember this. Okay.
And now they are linking 250,000 infections to that rally. It's 250,000 infections from this rally where nobody was going to wear a mask because this rally was about freedom.
Yeah, this is the whole argument that I just cannot wrap my head around. What part of wearing a mask equates a loss of freedom or a loss of rights with a perception? How does somebody make the leap from I need to do something that is beneficial to help prevent the spread of a virus to I am losing freedoms and rights? I don't get it. Yeah. What right are you losing?
I don't know. I don't know.
I mean, there has certainly never been a written right that you could exit your house and enter a public establishment without wearing something, right?
Right.
In fact, historically, it's been no shirt, no shoes, no service. Right. So.
Right. And there's a local restaurant that I drive by every day when I take my kids home that says no mask, no service, no discussion, no exceptions.
I wish that was posted more places. So I think it was a week or so ago, I went into Target and I had my first watching an experience of some guy refuse to put on a mask. Ooh. And be vehemently opposed to the idea of wearing a mask. And I just could not wrap my head around it. And I just turned around and left. There's no reason for me to be exposed to somebody else's stupidity. But the whole idea that you equate that to some God-given right or some governmental given right.
American
I just
freedom.
don't get. Yeah, you still have the freedom to go do things. You still have the freedom to express yourself. You just wear a fucking mask when you do it.
Yeah, the mask is it's more, it's less comfortable to wear a mask than to not. But being able to breathe is really important. And if you get sick, one of the things that people have difficulty with is breathing. So yeah, it's so that, like, I'm not even that like, I'd say I'm not even that like, my conviction for mask wearing isn't even super strong. It's just like, I go in the grocery store, I've got a mask on before I enter the grocery store, or if I'm gonna be like, I'm putting it on as I get out of the car, because I feel like if I'm outside and I'm like 10 feet away from someone, I feel I'm safe. I feel like they're safe. But I'm gonna have a mask on before I get into the store. I'm gonna have a mask on the entire time in the store, and the mask is gonna be worn properly so that my nose and my mouth are covered. It's like, there's this whole thing. It's like, you got your nose sticking out, you might as well not be wearing the mask. And if you can't hear me, I'll just try to talk a little bit louder. And a friend of mine was talking about being a pharmacist in a grocery store, and as soon as the person wants to talk, they pull their mask down so that they can be heard. And I was like, that's like the worst time you can pull the mask down. And then there's also like a plastic barrier, and they crane around that barrier so that they can be heard. Again, the whole, defeating the purpose. It's like, people told you to wear a mask, and then you have no idea why you're wearing the mask. Like, the person that does that comes across to me as like, I don't have any clue why I'm wearing this mask. I just want to do it so that you leave me alone.
Yeah, I would say there's an aspect of that. I would say it's also that we as in society in general, haven't done a good job of saying, this is why you wear a mask, and showing, some of the different studies that have been done. This is how you wear a mask, and if you can't communicate appropriately with a mask, these are your alternative options. The problem that I see is that too many people need every little step spelled out. They can't infer what any additional follow-up actions would be. They just need you to say, this is what you do. People are sheep.
Yeah.
And I think that's the biggest thing it comes down to, is the lack of education in most of the areas where we're seeing it, which unfortunately we're in Alabama. So, Mississippi would probably be the only place that's worse.
No,
maybe Florida.
I don't think Georgia, Tennessee, Mississippi, or Florida have mask mandates. Alabama is one of the only southern states with a mask mandate, or at least the last time I looked, which was maybe a week and a half ago.
It might explain why so many people are claiming that it's a violation of their right to do something. I don't know.
I have read a fair amount of the Constitution. I don't recall a single thing. There's no inalienable right about not wearing a mask. That's for sure not in there, in those words. But I don't know what they're extrapolating from, and I don't think they do either. I think if you were to press them, it's like, okay, which part are you which article are you talking about? They don't know. They're not going to know.
Oh, they definitely don't. So I think at some point I mentioned that I had a propaganda video shared with me, and it was so easy to point to, but the opening kind of portion of the monologue was talking about what quarantine means. And why are we calling it quarantine when it's house arrest and blah, blah, blah. Like, that was the train of thought that the person recording the video went down. And their reasoning was that quarantine by definition, is for those confirmed to be sick and forced into isolation, whereas what was happening was forcing people into isolation to whatever. Like they never provided the whatever. It was just, let's call it what it is. House arrest, I think, was the segue. And so my response was, if you look at the definition for quarantine, one of those definitions is to remain isolated to help prevent the spread of a disease or other agent. What part of the current scenario does that not sound like? Like, is it saying you can't leave your house? No. Well, then it's not house arrest. It's voluntarily secluding yourself to help prevent the spread of a disease. Right. That's one of the definitions from Webster's, Merriam-Webster's.
Yeah, well, there is a term, mandatory quarantine, which indicates that a standard quarantine, or just quarantine on its own, is not mandatory.
True, but we haven't even had that be something that has been mandated in the states.
No, we haven't. I mean, there are some states that there's definitely certain countries, if you want to travel to them, if you can even travel to them, there is a mandatory quarantine, and I think some states they've had to enact a mandatory quarantine if you plan to enter their state. So there is that. So I think folks have been asked to quarantine to reduce the spread of this virus. And it has not been made mandatory by anyone, and hopefully it will not have to be made mandatory.
And I think that's the biggest distinction, is people haven't been asked to quarantine. People have been asked to isolate themselves as much as possible.
Which is even a less invasive request.
Correct. And so the person that shared that was talking about, well, you can't see it, we've had rights eroded over time, et cetera, and I couldn't wrap my head around that particular statement, because I can't think of any right that has been removed from any group of people over any period of time sub 100 years.
Yeah, it simply hasn't happened. I just want to know where they were when they were passing the goddamn Patriot Act.
Yeah, the same person would probably not be paying attention to like the net neutrality information or anything else that would be far more important to me.
Well, I mean, it's one of those things it's actually far more important to them. They just haven't been paying attention to it. Like, yeah, I mean, it's when it's all of a sudden in your face, you're going to be upset about it. But I think even beyond that, it's like wearing a mask doesn't actually affect you in a meaningful way. Like, you don't have to go to a store, especially in the town that we live in and the suburbs of this town. I can get my grocery brought to me. I can pretty much anything I'd like to buy can be brought to me, brought to my house, and I don't have to. I don't even have to talk to a person. I don't have to see that person that brings it. We can communicate through the various channels that have been provided to communicate, and I was doing this quite a lot before the pandemic, and it's absolutely possible in most cities to not ever have to wear a mask and not go without. But folks just want to complain about wearing a mask. They want to get upset. And honestly, what I think it comes down to is at the end of the day, people identify more with a political party than common sense. And so if your opposing political party says we should all be doing this, they're going to balk at that.
100%. It's pretty easy to tell it's pretty easy to tell when someone gets their news from a specific source, and we'll just call them out, Fox News. Those people tend to not have any regard for understanding what they are opposing or what they are viewing, or pretty much anything about the world in general other than what is spelled out as for them from that source. And they view it as objective, and it just leads down a rabbit hole if you ever try to correct them, right? I don't know of any other news source. Well, NBC can be pretty bad the other way.
Especially MSNBC, but
yeah. But even then, like I can't think of any other news source that is that polarizing, where the intent is nothing more than to craft a political discourse, regardless of what the facts or actual details of a scenario are.
Yeah, Fox News has been just bad news for a long time. And I can remember back in the day when I used to have television, I felt like I was more informed by watching a news comedy show than any of the news outlets, left, right, or center, actually. And it's because it's a comedy show. They seem to have freedoms that a news outlet didn't. Because it's a comedy show, it's not serious. I mean, even though a lot of these comedy shows started taking on very serious political topics, it was viewed differently because it was fun. And yes, they were fun. They were funny. They were making fun of things, but they did some. I think they did some in the late 2000s, and I think they still currently are. I just haven't watched them in a while. They're doing some hard-hitting journalism because their hands aren't tied the same way a standard news outlet is.
I will say right now, I so miss Jon Stewart.
Oh my God.
I just want him to come out of retirement and do an ongoing series until the pandemic is over.
Yeah, I've seen him. I've seen him on calls with Trevor Noah. Trevor Noah, right? Trevor Noah.
Yeah, Trevor Noah.
I think Trevor Noah is doing a fine job. I think they chose a really good host for the Daily Show to take over. But Jon Stewart was special. He's a special man, and I, like you, I really would love to have him back. Did I
go ahead.
I was gonna say, did I ever tell you about going to a recording of the Daily Show?
No.
If this is a fitting moment to fit it in, I will. But if it's gonna,
certainly.
Okay. So it was late 2010, October of 2010. I got to go to a recording of the Daily Show. I was living in Brooklyn, and one of my coworkers used to be an editor for the Daily Show, and he once told me, he's like, anytime you want to go to the Daily Show, just let me know. I'll call someone. I guess he was called like a production assistant or something like that, and said, I'll see if I can get you tickets. And they're all the tickets are free because they want to fill up the studio. So I told him I was interested. And he's like, okay, I'll find out when. He's like, when can you go? And I told him what my off days were. Got me a ticket. Got me a ticket in the VIP section. And I went to the show. And there's a comedian that comes out and warms up the audience so that we're all, just primed for laughter once the show starts. And he was pretty good. And when you start starting warming up a crowd, you're like, hey, and you want everyone to say hey back. And inevitably, the first hey back was pretty weak. So he's like, let's do that again. And we do hey, and then it got louder. He's like, one more time, I think I can get more out of you. I'm sitting there, and I was like, okay, he's gonna get everything I've got. And I yelled hey back to him as loud as I could. And I got his attention because he turned around and started focusing on me for all of his jokes. And so I'm sitting there. I was sitting next to my now ex-wife, and she was barely 2 months pregnant with my first son. And he comes over and starts asking me, personal questions, and asked me if I came alone. I was like, no, this is my wife. And then he said, he's like, how old are you? And he's like, 27. And I was like, yeah, 27. He's like, okay. He's like, how long have you been married? And I was like, I'm trying to remember. At the time, I think we'd been married for like 6 years, seven years, something like that. And he said, oh, you got married young. And I was like, he said, did you get her pregnant? I was like, yeah. And he was like, oh. And I was like, but don't say anything. And he was like, what do you mean? I was like, she's just 2 months pregnant. We haven't told our family yet. And he was like, oh my God. And he's like, am I the first person you've told? And I was like, yeah. And he was like, oh. And he gives me like a big hug. Like, she's just sitting there like being completely ignored, even though she's the pregnant lady. And he gives me a hug and like says, like, everybody clap your hands. And I didn't realize he was, at the time, that he was thinking, did I get her pregnant and that's why we got married? No, that just, it was on my mind that she was, we hadn't told anyone. And so I was like, yeah. So it just kind of played out that way. And then when we told family, I can remember my ex-wife's mother saying, are we the first ones to know? And we're like, well, there's kind of like 300 other people that found out before you.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah. What I was going to say was just that I thought Trevor Noah was a phenomenal choice. The only reason I haven't watched more of the show since the pandemic hit is just the recording quality. And I blame part of that on John Oliver. So you can tell that the folks with was it last week tonight?
Yeah,
what
HBO.
Show? Yeah. You can tell that they just moved a studio into Oliver's home or whatever they did. Maybe they moved back to the studio. Either way, the production quality for them is significantly higher than both Colbert and Trevor Noah last time I watched either one of them. And it just got to where I couldn't take the production quality. Like the content was still great. It was just, I don't want to see, handheld iPhone video.
I totally understand. It's surprising how, like, some of the largest and best video production entities are just, like, literally phoning it in. And I don't want to be so harsh because maybe somebody's just like, I really don't want anyone coming in, and I respect that because this is a scary, terrible virus, and so, but I feel like there's a way you can just, like, with what we do know about the virus transmission, somebody can come in, set up a studio. You go in, they can set up a studio, and time passes where there's no chance of there being a contaminant in the studio, and you just go in and everything be done remotely. I mean, all the cameras. I assume you can automate all the cameras because, well, no, like I know those guys. The cameramen are actually doing like a lot of things, moving in and out, but they could definitely increase the video production quality. They can't. I don't want to say they can replicate what they do in the studio because I don't think that they can, not without having people there. But they can at least put a good camera in front of the host.
Yeah, I was willing to give a pass for the first few weeks, but and part of it may be my bias since my first creative endeavor was playing with video, and that segued into photography and. Photography is where I spent more of my time after that. But at this point, we're so far in, how difficult is it just to ship a decent camera with some basic instructions where you set it up on a tripod here and we'll take care of editing, no problem. You just give us, a decent video stream. Like why are we not at least doing that? Why does it look so horrifically subpar?
At the end of the day, I gotta imagine, whatever the equivalent of the Screen Actors Guild, it may be saying, no, you can't do that. Could be totally. I'm being a pessimist at the moment.
Well, I just figure, at this point, if you have an iPhone, you should be able to get better video than what we see with a lot of things if you just set it up on a tripod.
Yes.
And use the rear-facing camera.
Yes.
So, at a minimum, even if you're just using your own tools, why aren't we having something that looks more like professional video?
I think at the end of the day, most people don't care. I would be surprised if viewership declined any significant amount based on video quality alone, and video and audio quality alone, because people are going to be understanding that it's a pandemic, and so you just don't have to do that. I can remember the transition from television, watching TV on SD versus HD. Back in those days, when all the HD channels were like in the 700s, it's like, if NBC was channel 13, NBC HD would be channel 713. And I would just see someone like watching. It's like, why are you watching channel 13? Go to 713. And they go to 713 and like, oh, that's better. And I'm just like, yeah. And it just baffled me. It just baffled me that like you had to see the comparison was needed to like the back-to-back comparison was needed to where I'm just like, I cannot watch. Like if there's an HD version of this, I cannot watch the SD version.
I guess it's also interesting because if you look at like my PLEX library, I tend to make sure the audio is great and I can be more forgiving on the video depending on where it was when I encoded it, right? Like, there are plenty of things that if I went back and re-encoded now, they would be much higher quality, and just because of what I know about bit rates and everything else and how to achieve that result. Whereas when I was first converting discs to digital formats, it was very much space constrained. And so I would rather have video artifacts than audio artifacts.
I don't know what I don't know what my trade-off would be, because like my gut reaction is I don't want to see a video artifact, but man, sound like drift is the worst. Like watching video with audio drift is probably one of the most annoying things. I'd rather have low bit rate and good audio than see any sort of audio drift.
Which makes it an interesting comparison that now, like the same videos I'm complaining about have good audio typically. I don't recall any of them being horrible from an audio perspective, but it was a combination of it's so subpar compared to what I can produce without being good at it that it's difficult to watch. I think that's the big difference. I think me as an amateur, if I can understand enough to produce something that at least has a better feeling production quality to the end video, then there's a problem if a major studio is not producing the same quality I can produce or better.
Oh, totally. Because that's their job. I think I was just reminded, like, the thing that gets me, like the thing that just makes me sad at myself the most is when I don't get the right subtitles. Like if there's a section of a movie that has subtitles and I haven't seen that movie in a while, and I'm like watching the movie, and I'm just like, this part is supposed to have subtitles, right? And I'm just like, I don't know, and I don't have a disc player. Well, I don't have a traditional disc player, and I'm just always sad when the forced subtitles are not always correct.
Well, and that opens up a whole other issue with encoding, where sometimes it was done as a foreign audio track, and sometimes it was done as forced subtitles, and that I don't know if that ever even became standardized. I do know that it's been more consistent in the past few years, so maybe it did. But even then, especially with TV shows, it could be one way one season and one way the next.
Ooh, I didn't even think about that. It's mostly movies that I have that issue with. And I remember the first time that bit me, I ended up going to the chapter, like this movie I was ripping. I ended up going to the chapter where the subtitles are supposed to be, and I only ripped that chapter. And I didn't, it was like one of the first things I was learning how to do subtitles with, and I just ripped the chapter, and then made a compression for each setting that I could choose for subtitles to figure out which one I needed for that video. And I have since gone back and made a list of all the movies I need to look at and make sure I've got the correct subtitles, so that whenever I pull that out, I was just like, all right, I'm gonna have to go to that chapter. I'm gonna rip it and figure out what setting I need to do for this particular movie, because I feel at this point it's a movie by movie process. Because there's no standard that I know of, and if there is a standard, then some folks just don't adhere to the standard.
I'm sure part of it also depends on the particular company's definition of what should be forced versus optional, and what should be considered a translation of foreign audio versus what should be just a subtitle.
I feel like that should be a lot more straightforward than it is. The way you're saying it, I feel like it. Like the discrepancies that you're bringing up, they make sense to me, but I was like, it should be a lot more straightforward than that, though.
Well, I'm sure it also depends a lot on whether you're overlaying portions of your subtitle track for closed captioning, or if you have distinctly different tracks depending on whether you have closed captioning selected or not, and that kind of thing too. Like I don't want to make it overly simple, because I get why there are decisions made, but it seems that the driving kind of decision is more on encoding and not what the end user needs to see, because DVD players handle it differently than trying to pull apart those streams for creating a digital file.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, it's like if you're watching it the way they're expecting you to watch it, which is in a disc player, it's going to work correctly.
Yeah, if they want me to watch it in a disc player ever again, they've got to quit putting all the forced crap up front.
Oh my gosh, I well, I was just going to say, I think their end game is that the correct way to watch this is in a disc player, and this is going to work in a disc player. Every disc player that is allowed to play this disc video is going to show the correct subtitles when we want these subtitles at the correct time, based on what setting you have set on the disc player. And when there's a portion of the video that you're supposed to see subtitles, you will see subtitles. But that leads me to another thing. There are some videos that have the closed captioning subtitles for the translation of non-English. So I watch in English, so it's got the translation of the thing that I need to understand as an English watcher or English speaking watcher. And instead of using some videos will have the subtitles that are in a nicer font, and some will use sort of a terrible font that I think the DVD player or the disc player is creating from maybe closed caption information. I don't know, but there's definitely a difference in the font between movie to movie, and that is also painful for me. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. And I didn't notice it as much until I changed my process and used Make MKV for the initial pass instead of some of the stuff that I was doing before. Because the way it pulls the track, unless you have options changed, if you just pull it up in VLC to watch, it does the closed captioning track by default. And I didn't realize that. And so the very first time I was spot checking something, it's like, why do I have
closed captioning? Oh. It's offensive.
Yeah. Yeah, it can be, especially when it's something that you have no reason to have any of that information on, or a movie that you've seen, many, many times, and then suddenly you see things pop up on the screen that just annoy you immediately.
I feel like regular people would look at me and say, "You're being too picky."
I think that's kind of the burden of any tech enthusiast, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It very much is.
Speaking of, I didn't realize, I've for some reason or another been on a kick of going through what I have and figuring out what's missing or what I overlooked or what I deleted when space was an issue. I didn't realize I never actually had a copy of Maverick, and for some reason or another felt I needed to watch it. So I had to track down a Blu-ray of Maverick just to be able to create a rip so that I could watch it.
Good movie. It's got one of my favorite cameos in it. The Danny Glover cameo. I'm getting too old for this shit.
Yeah. Yeah, the scene where they look at each other 2 or 3 times.
Yeah. Such a good cameo.
I think part of why I wanted to watch it so bad was because of Kenny Rogers. Did I send you, there was a meme earlier when he passed where it was like that was the most gambler thing ever to go ahead and fold him at the beginning of 2020?
No, I don't think so. That's great.
I'll have to find it. I know I laughed a lot harder than I should have at that particular one. I even saved it somewhere on the phone.
That is some of the best fast food macaroni and cheese I've ever had. Yeah. That was a good movie. I haven't seen that in a while. That was actually one of the first movies I saw on Netflix. Back when Netflix was a disc by mail company, or their primary method for providing content was disc through mail. I remember renting Mavericks and getting those red envelopes.
That was the only method when they first started.
It was, and I think I joined in late 2001 because at the time I got a computer with a DVD player. It wasn't a super drive. It was a DVD. It was a combo drive, DVD reader and CD RW. And the first DVD I had was Castaway. But I remember I had a whole process for Netflix. Talk about space being limited. Back in those days, there was not a lot of room on hard drives. So I would get 3 DVDs in the mail because that was the only program they had. It's $20 a month, 3 DVDs out at a time. And I wanted to maximize that $20. I wanted to get the most out of my $20. So 3 DVDs would come in. I would rip all 3 of them that night. Wouldn't watch them. And then I'd put them in the mail the very next day, so they went right back. And while they were shipping back to Netflix and my next 3 were coming to me, I would watch those movies, and then I'd promptly delete them from my computer because I didn't have the space to keep those movies.
Yeah, I had a fairly similar routine. Do you remember when Blockbuster had their competing video service?
I do.
So I actually had accounts with both so that I could maximize my number of discs available at a time.
Nice.
But it was the same type thing. I would get them, I would rip them, ship them back, and then I would watch them while movies were being shipped back and forth. And then obviously I didn't have space at that time either, and so I would delete them and start over. It's interesting that you mentioned the first DVD you bought. Well, I assume bought. Was that Castaway or was that... Yeah. So, by comparison, I waited for The Matrix. The Matrix was the first movie that I bought as a DVD, and I did not have a DVD player at the time.
That's funny. The Matrix was one of 2 VHS that I bought for myself. Like, my family had plenty of VHS that were purchased, and I actually think I bought these 2 movies together, and it was The Phantom Menace and The Matrix. And as soon as pretty early on, I bought the DVD copy of The Matrix. And that actually reminds me of this moment I had when I was going through and adding all of my movies to the PLEX library. And I had that DVD of The Matrix, and I remember my method was using Make MKB and Handbrake, whatever the current Handbrake, and using the current H.26. Is it H.264?
Yep.
Whatever was current, that's what I was using, because I was putting them in an compressing them and putting them in an MP4 container. And I remember, sort of just automating all of that. I had my presets, and I'd do the bit for bit pass into an MKV, and then I would put that through Handbrake, and then look at the movie. And I remember when The Matrix was done, it was like, oh, this is just terrible. It looks so bad. It just looked awful, and I was like, oh, I've got to change these presets. And so I used a different set of presets, and the same thing happened. I was like, oh, this is terrible. And I did one more time, and I was like, what is going on? I just could not get it. And so I remember it's not his, but he's the one I associate with saying this regarding DVD rips and that, or even disc rips, and that is shit in, shit out. And so I looked at the MKV, and the MKV looked awful. So then I put the DVD in my disk drive, and it looked awful. And I was like, well, I will have to get the Blu-ray copy of this, because it just looked awful. That shit in, shit out was Don Melton. Yeah. He has one of my favorite phrases that he used all the time, and that was, all right, if everyone would just calm the fuck down.
It seems like I've heard both phrases from him on something somewhere, just in general, because he is not one that I have followed necessarily. And so, I know I've never paid attention to anything that he's done, specifically first party on any type of reoccurring basis, but I've still come across those.
He's been Renee Ritchie has had him on quite a few of the old iMore podcasts.
That may be where I heard them.
There were some really good shows. I want to say the first one he was on was probably an episode of Debug, and then I think they had such a good time that he was on various shows. And whenever people were like, what's going on with Apple? Why are they doing this? He was like, everybody just calm the fuck down. I'm pretty sure right now, if he could be telling us about that regarding Epic. Actually, I would love to hear his take on this, because he's been retired from Apple for getting close to a decade, and I would love to hear his take on this, because he's far enough removed from Apple, but still knows quite a lot of Apple folks that I think he'd have an interesting take.
I was thinking about just far enough removed, that particular phrasing. It's been 9 years since I worked for Apple. Is that right?
8 years.
Yeah.
8 years.
Not 8 years.
At least eight and a half. More than 8.5.
Yeah, and Like, it's interesting because I don't associate as much with individuals and Apple anymore, other than our obviously connection, just because we've now worked together in a couple of different places. But very few people do I come into contact with. My first thought is my exposure to them at Apple. It's always something else that comes to mind first, and then it's remembering, oh yeah, that's how I met them.
I had an interesting experience a couple of years ago. So I have been out of Apple for 5 years now, almost 5.5 years now, and so I think it was year before last would have been my 10-year mark for working at Apple. So, having worked in 3 Apple stores, I had this thing happen to me a couple years ago where I walked up to a guy, I recognized him, I was like, oh, hey, how are you? And start talking to him, and called him by name, and he was like, that's not my name. And I was like, but didn't you work at Apple? And he was like, no, I didn't work at the Apple store. And I was like, oh shoot, you look like a guy I worked with in New York. So I've gotten to where, like, some people I don't remember which store I worked with them at, because all the stores look the same.
Speaking of, I haven't been by the one here. Have they resumed operations in store for anything?
I have no idea. I haven't been by either. I haven't needed to. I have not needed to.
Something I may have to ask a couple of people. I'm just kind of curious.
I got a quick question for you about when listening to other people in podcasts specifically, because I think that's really the only place I hear this. When listening to other people talk about the Apple Store, do you ever cringe at their experience or think, yeah, that's sort of business as usual? Or, like, do you feel like you have, like, an insider's look at other people's experiences in the Apple Store?
I think it's a mix depending on the experience, but I've also had enough negative experiences since being removed from it that it's easier to see how some of the other experiences could have played out. For example, most recently, I was looking at that other laptop getting it serviced, and I knew it would just be flat rate repair, send to depot, and no reason whatsoever I shouldn't be able to get that quoted and done over the phone with any Apple Care advisor based on previous trip to the store where they ran diagnostics. And what I kept being quoted was replacement value of the computer would be charged to my card and placed on hold, and then anything that was a reduction from that, or whatever the case may be, would be the final bill. It's like, no. Number one, that's not a standard policy. And number two, I'm telling you exactly what you need to quote. Why don't you select it? Well, it ended up being positive anyway, because I could actually get more for it on a trade-in and got that Mac Mini instead for just over $200.
Nice,
so,
nice.
Yeah. I'm glad it worked out the way it did, but it was a frustrating experience because there's no scenario whatsoever where those words shouldn't have been able to trigger, okay, I know what you need.
Yeah, it's... I came across a well-done YouTube video. I think it was actually from a proper news outlet. It's one of those investigative journalism story, and it showed how the focus has shifted from let me help you fix your computer to, oh, your computer's repair is going to be so expensive, you should just buy a new computer.
That doesn't surprise me based on the shift to try to have time be so compressed with an individual as well. It's only another layer of trying to be more efficient, whether it's actually merited or not, under what I view as kind of the hallmark of Cook's Apple.
See, I thought about that, and my take was like, Cook's Apple is about increasing revenue, and this is the best way, or at least in the short term, that's the best way to increase revenue, is just tell people to buy a new computer. And because I don't think it saves anybody any time. I don't. I don't even understand the repair strategy any longer. And what I do know is that you can get pretty much walk in and get a Genius Bar reservation anytime you want, which is good. Like, that was always a problem while we were there. And it's interesting to see, like, every time I've gone in, I mean, I've had a reservation when I knew it was coming, but there's been a few times where, like, my phone broke, and the wait was never anything more. I think the longest wait was, like, 3 hours, because I went and saw a movie. I went and saw the last Tarantino movie, Once Upon a Time, in Hollywood, and that's a 3-hour movie, and I barely made it back for my reservation.
Well, the phones were never really that difficult to work in. The biggest thing about the availability of the bar reservations is that it's great if it's helpful. And unfortunately, it's only helpful if you get specific individuals. It's not helpful from a general principle anymore. And that may be overly harsh, just because at this point, I pretty much refuse to meet with specific people unless it's, like I know who I'm going to watch for. I know who I'm going to try to get. And most of that's because I can say, these are the things they've done. This is what I know it isn't or is. I need help narrowing it down based on getting you to run a diagnostic or something.
Yeah.
How much of that is just familiarity with knowing that I know what I'm saying versus what I would get with somebody who doesn't know me. That's probably why I gravitate toward making sure I'm with a person that knows my background.
Yeah, I do appreciate when somebody knows what my background, because I will say though, I got schooled 2 times, like, not the last time I was there, but I got schooled pretty recently, because after my issue was resolved with something as minor as like an SMC reset, and I did not think to do that, and so ever since that time, I'll go and I will look on the K-Base page and make sure that I've done everything that they're going to do, so I can be like, here's what I've done. I need you to do your thing now. And most of the reason why I can't do their thing is because I don't have access to their non-customer facing tools. So the last time I went there was real fun, because I told the technician that I did a DFU restore on my phone, and they're like, "Can you I had a good one. They didn't know who I was, but I had a good one, because they were like, "Can you go through the steps of the DFU restore?" And I did, and they're like, "Okay." The guy was like, "Okay, you know what you're talking about." And I was like, I do. And then I told him who I was, and I think Fred came up and said, give me a hug, back when we could give hugs to each other. And without knowing what he was doing, vouched for me. So that was actually a really nice interaction, because the guy I was working with also knew what he was doing. And so that was actually quite pleasant.
Yeah, I don't remember the last time I had to go in prior to just getting that laptop diagnosed. And the whole point of that visit was just, I just need a quick diagnosis so I can get a quote and go back and have the company either replace it or scrap it.
I remember that.
And so I didn't even care who it was for that one, because I just needed them to run their thing and give it to me.
Yeah.
But I don't remember having to go in for anything else really any time in the past couple of years.
I have had to go in too many times.
I certainly haven't had to go in for the phone, though I have questions about whether a particular couple of things I'm seeing are software artifacts since I am running in beta, or if it's maybe actually something with the phone.
I have no things on betas right now. I briefly used the public beta for whatever the next iOS is. Like, man, I feel so bad because, like, whenever I would listen to podcasts, I was like, I knew the things that the podcasters didn't know. It was like, it was, the first unibody MacBook Pro came out in October of 2008. You should know that. You should know that before you should. I don't remember. I don't know what iOS we're on. I guess are we on 13 or we're about to get 13?
We're on 13.
Okay.
14's next.
Okay. I briefly used 14 on an iPhone 7, and it was okay. I don't think they did anything, like, for the brief period of time that I used it, I don't think they did anything bad to it.
Yeah, I haven't had any major issues. The big thing that I keep seeing crop up is something that seems like it's almost like a go to sleep from a connectivity standpoint, where things take longer to reestablish and load than they should. And I've seen that before. I don't remember what I saw it in, whether it was a beta or what, but I also am not going to spend any time troubleshooting it until we finish out the beta process.
Yeah. Well, I assume that a Gold Master is on the horizon.
I would expect so. Timing-wise, it's normally sometime in this month.
Oh, I think even a little. You got a little. I got an email from Apple today saying there's an event in a week.
I didn't see that.
Yeah, there's going to be a media event on the 15th.
I'm not sure how I didn't see that, but I don't have a copy of that.
Yeah, special event 10 o'clock a.m. Pacific.
Yeah, so I would expect a Gold Master that week.
Yeah. I'm assuming 15th, maybe they'll get iPhones will drop a week and a half later, because the 15th is a Tuesday, and I imagine there's going to be a week later, the Friday a week later, probably
25th.
Yeah, that's probably, I guess, pre-orders. No, pre-orders are probably before that. I don't know.
Well, if trends continue, the 18th will probably be where they open up pre-orders, and the 25th be when they start shipping.
Yeah, that's what I was going for. I think this time around, if there's an iPhone that is reminiscent of the iPhone 4 and 4S model, I will be pre-ordering my iPhone.
Yeah, I've made sure that I've stayed away from any rumors. Not necessarily intentionally, but more a matter of I don't want to get my hopes up on that squared edge design, because that's what I miss so much from the 4S. But if it's a squared edge design, there's nothing that's going to stop me from having it.
Yeah, there's a rumor that there's going for the Pro, and I love what why is his name blanking on me? I keep wanting to say John Syracuse, but that's the wrong John from the talk show. John
Gruber,
thank you. I love what he said about when the iPhone Pro, last year when we had the first iPhone Pro. He's like, with Apple, Pro means deluxe. So if the iPhone Deluxe has a midnight blue color, I think I'm all about a midnight blue color on an iPhone Deluxe.
I'd have to see it. I don't know. I've been really happy with the Batman-esque dark grays and blacks.
The first Apple product I ever owned was an iPod. It was the 4th generation iPod, the one right before the video iPod. And there was one option. No, I take that back. There were two options. It was 30 gigabytes or 60 gigabytes. They were all white. And then I got that in May of 2005. And that was right around the time, like, I pulled the trigger right when I came across an article where Steve Jobs said, yeah, we'll never put video on an iPhone. And literally 5 months later, there was a video iPod, and you could get it in black. Because at the time, I had an IBM ThinkPad, and I was a Windows user, so I was like all about the black. And so I was just like, I was really like disappointed. But I ended up with a black iPod video, and thought it was the coolest thing because they got really thin. That form factor got really thin with the iPod video, and then by the time the iPhone rolled around, I'd been an Apple user for quite some time, 2 years. And my first iPhone was the 3G, and I was like, I want the white, so I went with the white, and liked the white, and then I went with black iPhones from the time on. I only had that one white iPhone because the front was black, and then when the iPhone 4 came out, the white wasn't available, so I got black, and I have never gotten a white iPhone or any other color iPhone again.
So the 3GS, I had white, and I don't remember if it was the 4S. I think it was the 4S that I had white. Might have been the 5. I'm real fuzzy on which one it was. There's been one other iteration where I've had white, and I liked it, but I realized I didn't like it as much because it did not have a black face, and it became more distracting. And so since then, it's been black from that point forward.
I was the same way. I felt like the white face was distracting, and so I never wanted to use I always went with black. And I gotta say, when they added colors to the computers, I was like, I kind of don't like the color option.
Yeah, I've never really paid that much attention. The computers have always gone relatively traditional. Like with the newer anodized look, space gray was the only choice as far as I was concerned.
So I thought the same thing. I was like, space gray and the anodized aluminum, that's awesome. It's really pretty. And it is. But I kind of I miss the silver, or at least what they call silver now. And I like that classic Apple look, and I kind of wish I'd gotten silver.
I'm thinking a little bit different there, where the newer phones, once they went full screen for the front, I don't mind the introduction of colors on the back plate because it's not as distracting, and in some cases looks better, depending on what you're going for. But the computers, I definitely am a space gray fan.
So I remember when I first started working for Apple, there were white computers, there were black computers, and then the deluxe models were the silver aluminum. And I remember somebody saying that the shade of aluminum, the shade that the aluminum was chosen to neutralize the eye so that it sort of, when you were doing any sort of color editing, it would not interfere. It would be less, I guess, have some sort of less interference. That was said. I never saw any proof of that. I never saw any documentation. Never saw any actual copy anywhere that said that was a thing. I think it's a nice idea to believe. It would not surprise me if that was the truth, but certainly not verifiable at this point. But I have really gotten to like that silver color, and I think my next computer will be that silver color. And just like, I really love the way Apple did white. It was really cool when they did crazy colors. They in the late 90s, they like, hey, look at us. They in so many ways with that first iMac, they said, please look at us, and it's because we're doing something awesome, and they were. And then all of a sudden they went white, and it wasn't like a terrible sterile white. It was this nice, clean, crisp white, and it was like, oh, look, we can do something different again. We're doing the exact opposite of what we just did. And I thought that was really cool, and I got to really liking that white. And I sort of miss that. I think it's a bygone era, but I sort of miss like the clean, crisp Apple white.
I think there might be something to be said for that. If they could do white like they do the space gray or the rose gold in the aluminum in a way that looked good, I would be inclined to give white a shot.
Yeah, I think that the the squared edges like the iPad has, and hopefully the iPhone will have, would look at, I think it would look really cool if they did a white on aluminum that makes the aluminum look like plastic. Not that because Apple uses very high quality plastic, but I think the aluminum's cool, and I think that's the way they should go. But if they could make that, paint it in such a way that looks like plastic, I think that would be a really cool look.
I don't know if I'd want it to look quite like plastic, though. Like in my mind, I have more this whitewashed, weathered aluminum idea that I don't know how to describe because it doesn't exist.
I'm not even sure I can picture a whitewashed aluminum, weathered aluminum.
Well, and I don't think it's anything that you would ever naturally find, but like the idea of being able to see the grooves and know that it's aluminum, but it be white in appearance, it's the best way I could describe it. I definitely have a mental picture that of what I think that means, and I think it looks neat in my mind, but whether it would actually manifest itself and look neat, of course, is completely questionable.
Yeah. So one of the things that sort of, I'm not going to say bothers me, but it sticks out to me, is if you look really close at Apple's anodized aluminum, whether it's the silver or the space gray, if you look really close at it, there's a lot of color going on there. It's not a flat, smooth color. There's a lot going on there, and it's really pretty. And then third-party manufacturers will color match. Like sometimes it's aluminum, sometimes it's a real low-quality aluminum, sometimes it's plastic, but they'll try to color match it, and they get the color right. But when you look at it really close, it's like it's this one smooth color. And if you look at Apple's aluminum, it's not one smooth color. There are these tiny little variations in color, and I think those tiny little variations are very pretty. I assume it's part of the anodizing process.
Probably. Did they still consider it brushed?
No, I don't think it's brushed.
Just anodized?
Yeah, I think the brushed only existed in the Aqua GUI. I don't think they ever had anything that was actually brushed metal. Maybe the underside of the G3 iMac was brushed, some sort of brushed stainless steel. But the back of the iPods were just polished stainless.
The 5 or the 5S had a matte back. It was historically not all the way across the entire back.
Yes.
So I think it was the 5. It seems, from memory, it sure seems like that was a brushed kind of appearance.
It was definitely anodized. I can't think of an Apple product that had, with the exception of maybe the underside. I think maybe the underside of the iMac G3 was brushed stainless, and I think it had it was brushed in such a way that it created a circular pattern.
And maybe it's just a matter of that's kind of what I want, is more of that brushed appearance with a white coating where you still have shadows, or not necessarily shadows. I don't think that's the right word when you're talking about metallurgy or finishing or whichever aspect it would be. But having that kind of brushed look without it being brushed, I think, is what I would equate to a whitewashed kind of anodized surface.
I'm still trying to picture that, and it's not coming, but it's certainly interesting. Mm-hmm. I was thinking of I think the idea that I had for what I was describing as painted metal to look like it was plastic, it was, I believe I saw a picture, like a rumor picture, that made me think, oh, that looks like it's metal painted to look like it's plastic. And the reason that was intriguing to me was, I feel like Apple's metal, the phones that use metal and glass feel a lot more, they feel a lot nicer. They don't feel, I never thought that the iPhone 3G felt like it was a low quality phone, but everything that came after that was metal and glass, and it felt better. And so, which I think is why they used metal buttons on the iPhone 3G and 3GS. was the first one to get the metal buttons. And so I think that the idea of have something that is this sort of pretty plastic, but turns out it's metal and it's like has a nicer feel is what intrigues me.
There's certainly a lot to that, because like if you take the current crop of phones, the steel adds enough weight and just better feel to it than the aluminum band around the other models. Mm-hmm. Even though I wouldn't say either one feels cheap by any means. No. The steel just feels drastically better from a heft perspective.
I agree, and it's getting to where I feel like I've got an iPhone XS, and it's like I wish it were a little bit lighter, but I'm glad it's not lighter. I wish it was lighter for when I'm holding it for a longer period of time, but I'm glad it's not lighter because the heft of it feels really it's not even heft is the wrong word, but the weight of it feels really good. It's just a nice phone.
I had to reach over and pick up the phones again, the work phone versus my phone, and even though the work phone feels like it weighs close to what the work phone or my phone feels like, that difference with the steel band is still, it's not heft. You're right, it is the wrong terminology, but it feels more, I don't even know what word I would use. It's not, because it's not that it's firmer, it's not like I'm squeezing it and trying to bend it or anything, but it feels more like it's a solid product than the other one, even though there's nothing to really give that impression.
Right. I think the weight, and I think it's the right weight for the right size that it is. And the ones that use aluminum are maybe just slightly underweighted for the size that they are.
You know, I bet it's more balance.
I don't even know how I would get a sense of balance on the iPhone. Because I thought balance as well, but I'm like, if you think about a knife, you want to balance the knife at right at the hilt, like where the blade and the handle meet. I think that's the correct way you want to balance the knife. And I assume that a handgun is going to have a certain kind of balance. You don't want it to be heavy on one side versus the other.
Well, I think it's maybe taking the literal idea of balance instead of the kind of manifestation of what it means to feel balanced. And so the steel phone feels like it's balanced throughout. Like the entire phone feels like it has the same type of play to it, I guess. Whereas picking up the aluminum phone, depending on how you hold it, you can hold it in a way where it feels lighter, I suppose. It's not actually that it feels lighter or imbalanced from a literal balance it on your finger perspective, but like the weight distribution feels imbalanced if you pick it up a certain way. And I don't get that feeling with the Pro.
Right now in my left hand I have my iPhone XS, and in my right hand I have an iPhone XR, and there's one sitting right next to me, so I was like, oh, I gotta do this. And I feel like the XS is just slightly heavier, and since it's a smaller screen, it's slightly more, the sense you get is it's just a little denser. I feel like when I pick up the XR, there's a disconnect because I feel like it should be just slightly heavier than the XS. I don't necessarily feel like an imbalance when I'm holding it. I'm holding it in the standard way where my thumb is right at the sleep-wake button, and I've got my index finger going across the back, not covering the camera, just going up to the upper left corner, and then 3 fingers wrapped around the other side. I can't say that I feel any balance difference. It just feels like I expect the weight to feel different based on what I'm seeing. I think that's my best description of the phones.
I think it's interesting, just from the description, we hold the phones differently as well.
Oh yeah, I think that's a whole thing.
Yeah.
That's a whole thing. And it's really interesting to hear. Like, it's one of those things. It's like I pick up a phone and I just assume everyone holds the phone exactly the same way as me, and I never really pay attention to how other people hold the phone unless I absolutely must. But I just don't pay attention, and I just assume everyone holds it exactly differently. And when you hear somebody describe how they carry their phone, this is my natural way of holding the phone. It's like, oh my God, I can't. Why would you even hold a phone that way? Because I remember hearing on another podcast somebody describing how they held the phone. I was like, that is the weirdest thing.
Well, it's like for me, I have it more rest in a cradle. So my pinky finger slides right up under the bottom left corner if you're looking at the screen. Mm-hmm. So it's like the pinky is what it sits on, and then the ring finger and middle finger kind of cradle it up to the halfway point, so that it keeps it from sliding or anything else. And those are the fingers that pull it into my palm, so that it's squeezed between those two fingers and my palm from a grip perspective. My index finger just falls up kind of about 3/4 of an inch to an inch diagonal down from the camera. So it's there to just rest the heft on, or for the upper piece. My thumb does not rest on the phone at all. My thumb stays in a position where I can move it to swipe and interact with the phone. I never rest my thumb against the side of the phone.
Yeah, so the way you just described when I'm using the phone, so when I pick up the phone, what I described to you earlier is how I hold it when I pick up the phone and I want to look at the lock screen. Maybe not it, but as soon as I go to use the phone, I hold it the way you just described. And sometimes I notice fatigue with my pinky finger.
Interesting. I guess I don't hold mine long enough to reach that point.
Yeah, that whole, the thing that people stick on the back of their phones that pops in and out.
Yeah.
I want to say it's called PopCap, but PopCap was that online game thing in the early 2000s. So I don't know if that's actually what it's called, but it's for that reason. It's because some people who have small hands can't, it's not good for their. I don't know if they can actually get the pinky down, but that whole thing is so manage holding the phone better. It gives you a much more secure grip on the phone, and I think that also. In my mind, I was like, that would be a valuable thing for pinky fatigue, but I just cannot do that to my phone.
Yeah, it's a pop socket. The only reason I know that is because I remember. Actually, I don't remember who was talking about it, but somebody was talking about Amazon and the suit with them. That may have been on ATP.
No, it was the talk show.
Okay. It had to be pretty much one of the two, I knew, but it was a 50-50 shot on guessing where I heard it.
I said that so confidently, and now I'm like, I have no idea which one it is, because I've been listening to both. I listened to an episode of the talk show, followed by an episode of ATP, and I'm now back on the talk show.
Yeah, I no clue. I just know that it had to be one of those with the congressional hearings where I heard it.
Yeah, I now have absolutely no idea which one it is. It's one of the two.
Well, we've covered every topic and deviated quite a bit from the topics except for the Premier League one. Do we want to tackle anything with that or make that a inaugural, once the season starts, let's do a Premier League focused episode?
I want to save that for the season starting.
Who do you guys play this weekend? Do you know?
I don't know. I have been a bad Arsenal fan.
I only know because I downloaded the fixture calendar today to be able to get an idea. We play Leeds Saturday.
Oh, lovely. Did you download a Liverpool fixture calendar or a Premier League fixture calendar?
Just Liverpool. I didn't want that many calendar entries.
Yeah, I thought not. I was just going to say, I don't think there's a good Arsenal fixture calendar. At least the last time I looked for one, there was not a good one. I can remember a long time ago. Actually, there used to be a really good iCal subscription to their calendar, but it has since gone. It went by the wayside like a decade ago, and I just whenever I go back and look, I'm just like, I don't find what I'm looking for.
There's a new one. Let me see if I can find it real quick. Because it was something that I got email on either this morning or yesterday. It was very recent. And it appeared to be a Premier League driven calendar system, and you could select all fixtures or individual teams. And it would do an iCal subscription.
Right when you said there's a new one, I thought that's exactly what I was thinking. There needs to be one that is managed by the Premier League, and you choose a team. But I guess what you're missing out on is non-Premier League games, because I would assume that for the teams that make it to the Champions League, it's not going to include Champions League fixtures.
Yeah, I didn't look that close because I honestly, if any Champions League matches, I tend to just pay attention to the schedule on the ESPN app, just because I want to know how other people are doing at the same time, and I don't want to follow those fixtures in the calendar anyway. So I don't feel like I would miss out on any of those, but I do feel like I would miss out on Premier League matches because of the way they schedule them.
Yes, the Champions League is so much easier to keep up with. Did the Champions League ever finish from last season? Or did they just no more Champions League for 2019-2020?
Yep, they finished. Bayern won.
Oh, well, it might as well not have finished.
They did change it. I guess it was the semifinal round and the quarterfinals as well, where it was single match instead of 2-leg games. And the final was, who did Bayern play? I'd have to go back and look.
Follow up for next week.
Yeah.
I forgot what my follow up for next week is, but you know what? There's a record of it.
Yeah, as long as you go back and listen to it.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's probably good to call it. Should we target roughly the hour and a half mark, and then anything 30 minutes over is still okay?
Yeah, I think so. We can consider it we don't have any bumper music, so it's either all show or it's all after show.
Yeah, works for me. I don't mind having after shows occasionally as well.
Yeah.
That way we can target an hour and a half, and if it goes over, as long as we don't break the 2-hour mark on a consistent basis, then we probably will be okay. I don't know if anybody's going to have the patience to listen to us for 2 hours out of the gate.
No, probably not. Unless they want to be put to sleep.
I don't know. I guess it depends a lot on the audience. And I don't know that most of the potential audience would have the same general interests across the board on a consistent basis. So maybe on an occasional episode basis, they would be engaged all the way through. I guess we'll just have to see how it goes.
Yeah.
At this point, I'm more concerned about just having fun with it and not killing myself on editing every week.
Oh, yeah. I understand. Totally understand.
At least until I get better with it.
Yeah. All right.
I don't have anything else, so if that's it, then until next week.
Yeah, next week.
Sounds good.
All right. Have a good evening.
You too.
Thank you.
Good night.